Hey Sid, so I'm just going to show you how to use Gear 360 Action Director to stitch and title and transition 360 videos. So first of all, it only has three components: the media browser, previewer, and the timeline. It works a lot like any other basic video editor, like Windows Media Player or something. So when you load it up, you get these sample projects. It'll tell you if it's a 360 video or image because it'll have the icon at the top right, and if it's a video like this first one, we can preview it using these play buttons, and we can change it from a photosphere to a panoramic view or equi-rectangular view. And if you want to use these, you just drag them down onto the timeline like so. So I'm going to get rid of these for now. I'm going to go to my own ones and drag and drop them in. If this is just raw footage you're using, it's going to come up with a bar and it's going to stitch them together, but these ones have already been pre-stitched. So at the top of the media browser, you have the media, titles, and transition layouts. So I'm going to start with the titles. I'm just going to use a default one because some of these other ones are a bit strange. And you click it and drag it onto the timeline. Now this is going to give you a little bit of a context menu down here. The first one brings you to the title designer, and here's where you can change all the text. So I'm going to say 360 stitch test. Character presets lets you enable word art sort of effects. You can change the font, the size, the color, spacing, line spacing, all that sort of stuff. Alignment. This effect has border, and you can also change the opacity. So I'm just going to change it to 55, and you can move it around. The settings at the top right are going to toggle the grid lines. You can change them around. I'm going to change it to 3x3, and it should snap if you have it turned on. You can add more text. You can also add a background, but annoyingly you can't add a 360 video as a background. I'll show you how to do them in Adobe Premiere in a separate video. I'm just going to change that. Okay, it's better to keep it in the middle horizontally and vertically because the center of the screen is what you look at first when you open a 360 video. If you have it down the bottom, it's going to be warped, and if you have it at the sides, it might be cut off and not repeat along the other side. So I'm going to click OK. So back in my media room, I have all my videos, and I'm just going to drag and drop them one at a time onto the timeline. Once they're on the timeline, you're not going to be able to change the view from photosphere to equi-rectangular because it has to render them as well as process it at the same time. So now that I've got these down here, I can add transitions. The blur and the fade transitions I've found are the best ones that aren't a bit silly or ridiculous like these other ones. So the only problem with the blur one is at the edges it doesn't perfectly blur it around to the other side. So if you're looking at the stitch on the edges at the side, you're going to notice a line, but otherwise for this title one, for example, it should be fine. So once you drag it down, you're going to see a little yellow box. That means it's going to fill in the transition between those two items on the timeline, and you just let go of it. If you want to preview it, you can press play, and it'll show you. So I'm going to use blur for the first one, and I'm going to fade the rest of these together. That's it. And if you wanted to add background music, you can add it on just over here. You can't add in extra audio for syncing up speech or something in here. It's got to be written into the actual video in the media browser. So that's pretty much this whole program. If you hit produce, it's going to take you to another screen, and it's going to give you a couple of options for export. So you can choose the resolution that you want to use. So if you're using 4K video, you want to use the 4K one, or 2K, use the 2K one. You also want to make sure it's Australian PAL if you're writing it to a disk. But you also have this option for intelligent SVRT. And what this will do is it'll try and optimize the 360 video as much as possible to give you the best outcome. So I can see this first one is optimized the most, so I'm going to choose that and hit apply. These settings that it changed to here don't correlate to what you just did, so that confused me as well, so leave that as is. If you click online, you can also post it to Facebook or YouTube if you wanted to, but I'm just going to write it to my desktop. So once I have that profile selected, I can hit start. But if you hadn't chosen an intelligent SVRT, it's probably going to take about 5 hours to render the raw footage, but because it's done this, it should take about 10 minutes. So now that that's done, I can save it to my desktop as whatever you want it to. And I can minimize that. I can open the GoPro VR player. And I can drag that in. So can drag the right one in. To preview that video. And that's it. Thanks.